Now we're live.
Now we're live. MLK
Oh,
Day.
Martin
Mannequin
Luther
chill.
King Day. Man, I can chill. It's Happy New Year. We haven't had a show since since last year.
Happy New Year. Time usually time got away from us. So we apologize to everybody. We say we're gonna do a show every week, and then like a month later, we haven't done one. But no,
I think we need to set our goals. Just we need to set our goals more realistic. Like every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I think we can do that. But I've said that before, and it hasn't happened.
yeah, just accept the fact we've done Mannequin Chill now for like a year and a half, and it's just gonna be random. It's just gonna be like whenever we decide to do it, and it's not that we don't have ideas. It's just Shane and I can both be very scatterbrained with like 84 ideas at once, and it's very hard to like concentrate them all in one show where we actually sit down together and put a show together. So yeah, we're here. MLK Day. We're live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, everywhere that I could click a button and it was able to go live. So we're live. So we're probably going to get random questions and stuff. So we'll get to those. Our first episode since the Dynasty season ended and headed into the playoffs. So still can have some impact with playoffs. I mean, we know that Dynasty now is like literally a day-to-day thing. So like player values are either tanked or accelerated based on what a player does in an arbitrary playoff game, right? Like we know that CeeDee Lamb's value took a 50% hit yesterday because he didn't have a great game, and now they're out of the playoffs. So everyone wants to try to sell him, which has created a buzz. Like everyone now should maybe try to buy him because maybe he's
Well,
better than what his market is. So we'll start there. That we talked. Knew we were going to talk about CeeDee Lamb. We
yeah.
did a
So
Dynasty Trades in 5 and CeeDee Lamb, so
we
check
did.
that out.
We
But
did.
where are you at, Shane? I mean, where are you
He's
at, CD?
so he's starting to become a buy. I'm just going to wait for the market to completely turn on him. It's getting there. It's getting there. It's slow. We saw it coming 2 weeks ago. We started making trades. Some of us traded guys like Jalen Waddle, and or we traded CeeDee Lamb in a second for Jalen Waddle in a first, or T Higgins and a first for CeeDee Lamb in a second. Like that's what we're trying to do, right? If he gets a little lower than that, where I can trade T Higgins for him straight up, well then he's going to become a buy for me. But it's not going to change the fact that he's not what we thought he was. He's not an alpha. At least he hasn't shown to be. Carlo Kiltz has his trade negotiations ongoing. Anyway, yeah, we talked about it in Dynasty Trades in 5, right? He's not commanding the target share that we want, and we can blame the fact that Dallas likes to spread the ball around, but we keep coming back to the fact that you earn your targets. If you're that good of a receiver, you're going to get the target share. Look at Jamar Chase. Look at Justin Jefferson. Look at Devontae Adams. And I know Devontae Adams' competition for targets is a lot less, but maybe it wouldn't be if that's not Devontae Adams there. Maybe if that's CeeDee Lamb there, MVS is getting a 20% target share. So I'm just going to wait for the market to turn a little more on him, though, and then I'll start trading running backs for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone looks at, obviously we're a DLF show, so we do look at our DLF ADP, and I mean the DLF ADP, he actually went up in value this month, wide receiver 3, and I think that's kind of where part of our debate started. That's why we did the Dynasty Trades in 5, because there's always been like a cult following with CeeDee Lamb. It doesn't mean he's not a good receiver, but he always has had these vibes of like he's been priced at such a elite level in Dynasty already. I mean, he's been a top 5 Dynasty receiver for almost a year now. And part of it just feels like it was a great situation. Dallas was a really good offense last year. If Dak wouldn't have got hurt, the hype might have been even higher on CeeDee Lamb. You got to like redraft season this year and he was an early to mid second round pick, like people taking him off the board as a top 5 or 6 receiver. His market share as a rookie didn't back that up. And then you get into this year and you're like, he's good, but at what point does he lose some of that luster of like, you just feel like everyone's kind of been waiting for Amari Cooper to get out of the way and Michael Gallup to get out of the way and them to just give CeeDee Lamb all these targets. And I think we've learned enough playing Dynasty for a while. That's not how it works. You don't wait 3 or 4 years for a great player to emerge in a situation where now he's getting all the targets. It's usually the opposite. If he's not getting all the targets, then he's probably not good enough to earn all those targets, and it doesn't matter who's around him. Michael Gallup leaves, they're just going to find another guy.
And they
Dalton
found
Schultz
him.
leave, they'll just find other players to fill the holes. If he would have been able to get that volume, he would have gotten it anyway. So that's kind of where the debate comes in.
He would have done it this year when Gallup went out. And he didn't. His target share didn't increase any. It increased by about 1%. That's not what you're looking for. Like if his targets were going to increase because Gallup's not there, or even Amari's not there, you'd want to see like a 5% target share increase while one of those guys is out, and you've never seen that. Trevor Augustus, hey man, thanks for watching. Is the third year breakout still real? Yeah, but you have to have the first 2 years have to be good. So CeeDee Lamb could still have a third year breakout. Look, like we're saying all this, obviously, if Dalton Schultz leaves and Gallup leaves and Cedric Wilson leaves, and they're left with just Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of not very good wide receivers, and maybe Lamb sees a very large spike. But the point is, dominant receivers earn that target share immediately. They hit a certain threshold in their rookie season, and by their second year, they're looking at 24-25%, and he's not there. He's just not there. And you could blame it that there's too many mouths to feed, but that just means that he's not a focal point of an offense. That's all that too many mouths to feed means for me.
Well, and I think you're going to look at some other names historically and say, okay, where does CeeDee Lamb slot in? I'll give everybody two examples. I kind of want to use, I don't want to use Juju because I think he's an outlier. We've kind of seen where that's ended up. But look at DJ Moore. You could say DJ Moore had a really good, quote unquote, second year breakout, right? But look where his value trajectory is gone. Now, sure, he doesn't have probably as good a situation as CeeDee Lamb's had, but look at where his value went after year 2 and then where it is now. Look at Chris Godwin. He had a year 3 breakout. Chris Godwin's great. He's not a top 5 dynasty receiver. Never was, never should have been. He kind of settles right in this like low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, but always susceptible to being passed by the next alpha that comes into the league. Maybe there's 2 alphas that come into the league this year. So I think that's the issue. It's that there's still this luster on the name CeeDee Lamb. People just expect, well, Gallup's going to leave. Cooper might get cut. Cooper might start to age and get hurt a little. Like he's just going to get incrementally better. When really, if you take what he's done in his first 2 years, he probably just ends up settling right back into a low-end wide receiver 1. Maybe he has a top 5 season coming up at some point, but I'm not going to get stuck on considering him anything other than just he's in that mix in that second tier. I mean, Shane, I actually had a good thread with your boy Jacob Sanderson. Shout out to your other venture, Fantasy Intervention. But he mentioned earlier today on Twitter, hopefully the CeeDee Lamb cult from yesterday loses a few members so he can snag some dynasty shares or 2 at a non-absurd price, which makes sense, right? That's kind of what you're thinking to do, a non-absurd price, right?
Yeah.
But my response was, the person with CeeDee Lamb probably is never going to see him at a not absurd price. You know what I mean? So if I have CeeDee Lamb, I'm trying to find a sucker that still will buy at the absurd price. So how do you buy him? How do you sell him? Let's just get right to the point. Like somebody in your league has him, but they're still saying, oh, CeeDee Lamb, he's a top 5 dynasty receiver. Can you even buy from that guy, or do you just have to wait him out?
No, you just wait him out, and there's nothing you can do there because I'm not paying the top 5 wide receiver prices for someone that hasn't shown, and the trajectory doesn't look like it's hitting that. I'll move on. If I'm going to spend top 5 wide receiver prices, well, let me get Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. AJ Brown, even though I think you think AJ Brown's probably in that lower tier. No, you think he's okay. There you go.
I think AJ Brown has done something, and people are going to say AJ Brown has been in a situation more favorable to get volume than CeeDee Lamb. He's been more efficient. He's just had more injury issues than Lamb. But I don't know if you put CeeDee Lamb in AJ Brown's offense the last 2 years, and he dominates the targets like AJ Brown has.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Everyone's talking about CeeDee Lamb. I'm checking the Twitters. So I'll just, like I said, I'll shout out some trades that I made. I traded CeeDee Lamb in a 2023 second for Jalen Waddle, and a 2023 first. Now, obviously, the deal I made, that's not a person that was, well, maybe they were. Maybe they think they were buying low from me. Maybe they think that I'm a little goofy and that they got a good deal on it. I certainly don't. Same thing when I traded Lamb, excuse me, and 2022 second for Higgins and a 2022 first. It people that's probably the only way to make that deal is you trading him, because people are still convicted on him being a top 5, and to them that's a deal. In other leagues, I'm probably going to try to trade running backs for him because I hate running backs and they're all evil. So if I could trade Antonio Gibson for CeeDee Lamb in a little bit, I think I would. DeAndre Swift for CeeDee Lamb in a lot of it, I definitely would. And then any running backs after that tier, I'll trade straight up for Lamb, because I still think he's going to be, look, he's got wide receiver 1 upside if everything breaks right. But if everything continues on its current course, I think he's going to be a consistent wide receiver 2. So again, he's not a bad player. It's just not what we thought he was when he was coming out of college. We thought this was going to be Justin Jefferson, basically.
Well, I mean, I think I mentioned 2 names earlier. Go back to DJ Moore, go back to Chris Godwin, go look them up on DLF, look at their value tracks over the last 2 years. That's probably where CeeDee Lamb is headed. You want him. I want as many shares of those guys as I can get. I don't want to pay the top end of the value range. I want to pay the lower end of the value range. I want to actually buy Chris Godwin now. If he's going to fall outside the top 20 because he has a torn ACL, I'll basically bank on him rebounding back to where he was before. Same with DJ Moore. If there's any questions about his quarterback issues, I'm fine buying back in. But I didn't want to buy it at wide receiver 4, at wide receiver 5. I'll tier down, like you mentioned, with 2 trades with Waddle and with Higgins. You're not going to be able to get a first plus those guys. I think after yesterday's game, you're off of that. Yeah, I mean, there's too much of a sour taste in people's mouth on Lamb after the playoff loss. So getting, Higgins in a first, Waddle in a first, that's laughable. You're going to get declined on that deal 90% of the time. But I think you can do what you were saying. Maybe you flip a second and a first, ideally, right? A 2022 second, 204, 206, 208, whatever it is. Turn that into a 2023 first. I think that's more than a round of value there. That's probably 2 rounds worth of value if you can swap a mid-second this year for a 23 first. And you swap Lamb for another receiver that you can put into that mix. It can be Moore. It can be Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Devontae Smith. I mean, you pick your names. We're not here to tell you what names to target, what names not. It's a process deal. You're tiering down slightly based on the ADP, still getting a wide receiver 2 or better locked in and getting the pick upgrade. And there's a chance that you end up with just a better receiver, Waddle or Higgins over Lamb the next 2 years. That wouldn't shock me. Here's one, Shane, assuming this is his 12-team super flex. Otherwise it gets a little wonky. Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb in the 22-106. I know that's like right on the fringe of kind of where I think we're comfortable at, where the breaking point is in 2022. What do you think on that deal? Or does that make you nervous?
No, that 106 isn't enough for me to give up Chase. So I'd be on the Chase side on this. I get it, though. I do, because 106, that's valuable. And Lamb, obviously, like we said, at worst is a wide receiver 2, which, again, is extremely valuable. There's always a chance that we just saw Jamar Chase's best season. I don't think so. But, I'm a guy that gets attracted to stars. I'm not real big on the whole tearing down thing, even though I've done it a little bit with these Lamb trades. I'm a star hunter, so I'd go with the Chase side. Now, again, if we get into some crazy settings, if it's start 10, start 11, start 12, obviously that changes the calculus.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Like, obviously in a start 10, it really is going to come down to what else can you do with that 106? Like, I would be fine replacing, even in a start 10, Lamb in my lineup for Chase. But what else can I do with that 106 that gets me a strong enough piece that probably, in a start 10, you want to probably have a core of like 15 to 18 players, right? Like, you don't want to go too far beyond that. But when you start getting into a deal where it's start 12, start 13, especially if I can replace that 106, let's say I can trade that 106 for Deontay Johnson, or I can trade that 106 for Terry McLaurin, or even like Elijah Moore. Like, it just depends on where the threshold is in your league. But if I present you a CeeDee Lamb and Elijah Moore in a start 13,
Oh
You
yeah,
might be more tempted to say take the 2-for-1, even if you're giving up Chase, right? If you're starting to get into 12, 13
yeah.
starters.
Yeah, as soon as we hit 11, that's an automatic smash for me, to be quite honest with you. At 10's where I'd probably debate with myself and try to talk myself out of making the trade. But once you get to 11, you can't. You just can't. You'd have to take the 2 starters. That, even if they're upsides wide receiver 2s, 2 wide receiver 2s in your starting lineup is it's pretty valuable right there.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a bunch of these videos on Dynasty Trades in 5. Shout out to Clay with Dynasty Pandemic, Dynasty Trades in 5. Give those a shout out if you like our Mannequin Chill. We're here. But I think what you're going to see is right now, if you go to like the DLF ADP and you just look at the wide receivers, there's just so many of them where you could find somebody out there on the Twitterverse or, kind of in our social circle of players. There's probably 30 to 40 receivers that you could probably find somebody that says, yeah, that's a wide receiver 2 or that's a wide receiver 3, right? But in reality, you can't have 50 receivers that are wide receiver 3s or better. The math doesn't check out. But the tiers are so flat that if you can find the value pivots within that range, I mean, Shane, you remember the Dynasty and Chill pod we did in 2019 talking about wide receiver pivoting?
Yes.
And how it was so saturated. And since then, we've literally brought in like 25 top 60 receivers from the last couple draft classes. And we're about to bring in another like 8 to 10 of them this year. Like,
we have absolute pairs. There's like there's multiverse guys in the same universe now. DJ Moore and CeeDee Lamb. Like, they're literally the same dude. Yeah, their play styles are different, but that's not really what we're speaking of. Yeah, I meant sorry. That's where we're at. It was getting saturated. It's going to be oversaturated. I mean, there's only so many wide receiver 1 slots, right? We've talked about that before, where outside of like 6 elite, maybe 7 elite wide receivers, everyone else is kind of interchangeable. As far as like, plugging in your lineup and getting points from and making trades for.
Well, and I think that creates 2 things. One, it creates a demand issue to where it really depends on how you build your team. Like, we could go and say, well, what's your cutoff point? Depending on your league settings, how many starters, how many roster spots, there's going to be a cutoff point. If you look at the ADP, it's probably somewhere around like wide receiver 55, wide receiver 60. And then you can extend out depending on how many starters you have. But I think what happens is the guys within that kind of lower tier, especially some of the older guys that have been in that range for a long time, think your Odell Beckham's, Tyler Boyd's, Jarvis Landry's, like those guys are really, really devalued by the market, right? Because you already know they're not going anywhere but down from a demand standpoint. So you're wrestling, like if you're doing a new startup or you're trying to evaluate trades, like where can you maybe find pivot down options and pick up production wise somebody that's not too different or that's not that bad of a bet compared to some of these low end wide receiver 3s from a value standpoint that might be propped up a little bit because of their age, because of their current situation. But in reality, if you can get a 2-for-1 shot, especially in a start 11, start 12, that's where I think you can really make some money. You have to be willing to kind of sell on what the market says. And I'll bring up a deal here where someone asked in the chat, a perfect example. Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he brings up, Talon Lee brings up specifically the Lions drafting a receiver, Hawkinson and Swift being back. But I think regardless of those things, we would be hypocrites if we said there wasn't some legitimacy to Amon-Ra St. Brown's first year, because he went out and garnered over, the volume that he did, period. He earned it. It doesn't matter who he went up against, who was in his same receiving room, if there was other injuries. Like, we would be crapping on a guy if he had a stacked receiving room but couldn't get the ball, right? So in the same regard, he did what he was supposed to do. Now, is he going to continue it and continue to get better? Or is he kind of just stuck in this, the names I mentioned, right? Just a continual wide receiver 2, maybe in a given year, but mostly a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. He's the perfect example of a guy where you could probably pivot off of Amon-Ra St. Brown for Tyler Boyd in a second, right? Something like that. You could probably do that deal. What are the odds you really end up getting that much worse production from Boyd over the next year or 2? But the real key to that deal is maybe you get the 204. Maybe you get the 205. Maybe you get the 210. Maybe you get the 220. Maybe you get the 230. Maybe you get the 240. Maybe you get the 250. Maybe you get the 260. Maybe you get the 270. Maybe you get the 280. Maybe you get the 290. Maybe you get the 291. Maybe you get the 292. Maybe you get the 293. Maybe you get the 294. Maybe you get the 295. Maybe you get the 296. Maybe you get the 297. Maybe you get the 298. Maybe you get the 299. Maybe you get the 200. Maybe you get the 201. Maybe you get the 202. Maybe you get the 203. Maybe you get the 204. Maybe you get the 205. Maybe you get the 206. Maybe you get the 207. Maybe you get the 208. Maybe you get the 209. Maybe you get the 210. Maybe you get the 211. Maybe you get the 212. and you draft another Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? You might whiff, but the odds, you have more flexibility now when you get that 2-for-1, and you may not lose a lot of production. So, I mean, what's your thought on that idea? And then I guess St. Brown specifically as well.
Well, yeah. So the one thing I'm typically always going to do is if someone outproduces their NFL draft capital and their fantasy draft capital, I'm going to trade them before they bottom out. All props to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love the name. I loved him in college. As soon as he fell to the 4th round, I loved him a lot less. He had a great run right towards the end of the year because he was there in the beginning of the year too, and he wasn't seeing a ton of targets. It is the fact that Hawk was injured, Swift was injured, and they have to draft a wide receiver. And more importantly, that was a bad offense. And I always look at teams and offenses, what they're going to do. Like it was what we were doing working. Okay, well, Amon-Ra St. Brown as your target leader, as your target vacuum, as your leading wide receiver. How did that turn out for your offense? Not great because their offense sucked. So I have a feeling if they use logic that they're going to want to improve their offense. And one of the areas they're going to look to do that is wide receiver. Now that doesn't mean that Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't have value. It's just not going to be the value that I think a lot of his current owners want. They're probably going to want a 1st-round rookie pick to move off of them. They're not going to get that from anyone like me. 2nd and Tyler Boyd, I could even see the other side of it, giving up the 2nd and Tyler Boyd and being okay with it and going, you know what, maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown is the outlier, and giving up Boyd in a 2nd really doesn't hurt as much as giving up a 1st. And by the same token, like you said, giving up Boyd in a 204 for Amon-Ra St. Brown or the other way around, that wouldn't hurt either.
But I think this is where we have to really, really look at your specific league and your specific market. Because the latest DLF ADP has Amon-Ra St. Brown as at wide receiver 25. So that's ahead of Brandon Ayuk, Marquise Brown, Amari Cooper, Rashad Bateman, Michael Thomas, Mike Williams, a bunch of other players too. But like the problem is you can't go to this specific spot. This is very similar. We'll talk about it in a little bit. The QB2s, the wide receiver 2s and 3s. You can't go to these spots and really trust the ADP because the ADP or a trade calculator may say one thing, but you could literally go to somebody in the league and be like, yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown is on the block. I have him. He's wide receiver 25. And then you go to the person that has Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 37, and you offer it straight up and they decline. And they just flat out say, I like Brandon Cooks better than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you can't tell them that they're stupid or they have no idea what they're talking about or they're crazy for not making that trade.
I mean, you can. It's just probably not the best way to go about making trades.
No, but I guess my point is, sure, you can call anybody stupid and then you can laugh about it. But my point is you could justify any 1-for-1 at receiver in this range. You almost just want to take the ones where you can get the extra piece, where you can get the tax. We talk about that all the time. Sell where you can get the tax on your side. Sell where you can get the bump. And if you're in enough leagues, and if you're building your team from like a roster construction standpoint, it really doesn't matter who you have. You can have your preferences. You can try to tell yourself a narrative that Amon-Ra's on his way down because the Lions are going to draft a receiver. Hawk and Swift are going to be healthy. He's never going to have more volume than he did this year. But you could then also look at somebody like Cortland Sutton and say, well, he can never do worse than he did this year. And he's going to get Aaron Rodgers next year. And he's going to be back to what he did in 2019. It's all narrative based. And I'm always going to buy against the narratives that people try to come to me at in January or February or even June. You know what I mean? Like the truth is the production here is not that difference making. So if you're going to give me a 2-for-1, unless it's a start 9 or a start 8 or I mean, there's some people that ask me questions like 10 teams, start 8. I'm like, dude, I don't know. Not many players matter there. But a lot of standard leagues, 12 teams start 11 or 12. Give me the depth. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you have any other thoughts. We'll move on.
No, I think we beat that to death. Just the overarching point is if the two guys are similar, just take whichever one comes with the extra, like you said, the tax. And CeeDee Lamb is close enough to T. Higgins and Jalen Waddle and Deontay Johnson that whichever one I can get on either side comes with something extra, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, and also you really have to consider how many roster spots you have total. You have to also have to consider some of your settings. I mean, we saw this year, if you just took this deal, and you might say, oh, that's not a big deal. All you're giving me is an extra third, right? To pivot from this player to this player where I don't really see a difference. All you're giving me is a third. That could be big. If we continue to see Dynasty and fantasy football being the same way that we saw this past year and the year before, what is that third during the season, Shane? That's a spot start from a running back. That's a spot start from a quarterback. It's only 1 week. But I'd rather have those extra picks in the chamber when there might actually be a point where I can buy them later. So it looks like you're not getting a lot. Certainly, I'd rather do a pivot like you're talking about where you flip a third for a second or a second for a first. Like, that's much better. But if all you're going to get is an extra little pick, a late second or a mid third or a future third, like, if you truly don't see a difference between the two players, make the deal, especially if you're playing in a lot of leagues.
And that's what we're saying. We're not saying, look, you're pivoting down from Jamar Chase to T. Higgins and being happy with a second round pick added on. Not that kind of deal, because those are not the same guy. They are different fellas.
Yep. Now, this is where you really have to put out your tiers. And once you get to like that third and fourth and fifth tier receivers, just understand that volatility is very high in that range. A lot of it is based on the offense, the quarterback, the efficiency, all that stuff. And it's hard to predict that when you're this far out, in that range. So that's the prime pivot range, at least right now. So another one, this is another guy in that same pivot range, Jeremy Clark.
Yeah, I saw a couple
Judy
questions.
And Sutton.
Judy. How do we know? So what are we doing with Judy, and how are we even sure that he's better than Sutton? Well, we know Judy's better than Sutton because when Judy played this year and Sutton, when Sutton played without Judy, he had a 25% target share. When Judy came back, his target share was 13.8%. This is a family-friendly show, so I can't say the words of how I usually describe this, but we will say that Jerry Jeudy took Courtland Sutton's lunch. He came in and said that you get no more targets and you are not wanted here, and I am the boss of stuff. So what I'm doing with Sutton, what I'm doing with Jeudy is Judy's still someone that if I can get cheap, I think I want to buy, because I'm hoping that Aaron Rodgers is going to end up there, right? Or Deshaun Watson or Russ Wilson or anyone that ends up there is going to be better than Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. And Drew Lock was last year too, right? Jeez, they're just not good. So the problem with Jeudy is people are still in love with him from Alabama. So he's another guy, even though he hasn't had a monster year in the pros, a lot of people still think that he's an elite asset, and I don't think he's that. So that's my problem. If I can get him for non-elite prices, great. If someone wants to hold on to the dream that he's elite or wants me to pay for the thought that he might be elite, I'm not going to pay that.
Yeah, I actually want as many of these Broncos guys as I can get, only because I think there's going to be some serious market steam for them as soon as they get a quarterback. If they don't get a quarterback, you may be stuck holding the bag again. But I want to have some Bronco flexibility to be able to throw around during rookie drafts, especially if I know that they just brought in a quarterback. I mean, it can be Watson, it could be Russell Wilson, it could be Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, as gross as this sounds, even somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo would be an upgrade for the weapons for Denver. So I think they're not going to go into next year without seeing a market swell for the weapons that they have. So it doesn't mean I want to buy them, but I really want to buy them because I want to capitalize on that window where there's going to be some popularity. I think if it's Jeudy and they end up bringing in like Rodgers, then there's going to be a massive market swell for Jeudy. Maybe not as much for Sutton, not as much for Noah Fant. There's going to be a little bit, but I just want to have parts of that. You know what I mean? I'm not convicted on any of the players there except for Albert O, which that's a whole different story. But I want to have shares. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be stuck with no Broncos because we're human, Shane. When they get Aaron Rodgers, we're going to be like, man, I wish I had pieces of that offense. But I would already have them and not want to be tempted to pay in July, you know?
I definitely would rather have Jerry Jeudy right now than having to pay the price once Aaron Rodgers gets there. And by the same token, I'm not going to trade away Sutton and Jeudy until somebody gets there, especially Sutton, because I don't think he's worth much more than a second. And I don't mean a front end second either. I mean, like, he's more towards the 206, 207 range for me. For that, I might as well just hold on to him, hope Aaron Rodgers gets there, and that everyone falls in love with him again, like you said.
Yeah, and a couple shout outs. Our buddy Kyle Senra. Hi, everyone. Hi, Kyle. Thanks for tuning in. Calvin Hobby. What's up, fellas? Happy MLK Day. Right back to you and all the listeners. Same with Cody Hutchinson. Same thing. Good stuff. And here's a great process deal, Shane. We got to give applause for this one. Kevin Krieger. He sold Waddle for Godwin and a 23 first. Like
yeah, it's perfect.
Yep. Even with the injury on Godwin, I think there's pretty good shot. I mean, we'll do a different show in the future on kind of what we think with some of these free agents, probably when the playoffs end. But that's a good example of you could insert any wide receiver 2 in there for Godwin. And that's exactly what we're talking about, right? With these pivot down deals where if you're getting wide receiver 1 value for Waddle, not that he's not good, but he's probably like Chris Godwin, right? Like you kind of hope that that's what he ends up being. Like, so if you can get the extra 23 first, that's like gold. So love that process deal on that. You mentioned Sutton's not really worth a second, or is just worth a second at this point. I want to talk to you a little bit about this rookie class. So here's my thoughts, Shane. I think we're going to get to a class where we're going to see a major tier break somewhere like in the mid to late first round. We're talking 12-team Superflex leagues here. And then there's just going to be a dead spot, kind of where like everyone's just getting their guys. But then it comes down to, I think the most popular picks, at least what I'm hoping for, is when I have late seconds, mid to late seconds this year, would you rather wait? Because if you look at some of the mock drafts, like we're going to get a lot of running backs that go in that like late second to early fourth round range this year. Some guys with intriguing profiles, some good size speed guys, some guys with elite receiving profiles. So think like a bunch of Michael Carters, Ramondre Stevensons, Chuba Hubbards from last year, but probably better players, right? Better overall profiles. How would you rather treat those picks with where we've seen running backs go in the last 2 years, where it's like, man, if you can hit on a Alexander Madison and just get him for 12 starts over 3 years, that was pretty valuable. That was probably worth a second, don't you think? If you had him for 3 years and you had him at that price and you never were tempted to like overpay because he was going to take Dalvin Cook's backfield, like that's not what you wanted to capitalize on. But if you just took him late second in a rookie draft and you've just started him when you knew to start him over the last 3 years, that's been a good pick. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what would you rather do this year with those late seconds, those mid to late seconds? Would you rather trade them for the Allen Robinson, Cortland Sutton types? Like right now, you're 206. Would you rather have one of those guys or wait and see if maybe you can get the next round 3 running back that could be Ramondre Stevenson or Michael Carter, or it could be Trey Sermon? Like it's still a coin flip, but what would you rather take shots on? What are you doing with those picks?
I'm waiting for the draft, first of all, till I'm on the clock and someone can send me an offer because their guy fell. But yeah, I'm probably going to take the shot on the running backs, especially naming those wide receivers you just named. I'm not a big guy on Cortland Sutton or Allen Robinson. So I'm probably taking the run at the running backs. I'm just looking at the draft we just did for DLF. We did a quick 2-round mock draft on the what do you call that? The slacks. Man, wide receiver is not pretty. After that first round is going to be fine. That second round is going to be absolutely frightening. I think I'd actually just rather trade the pick away for a pick the following year and just hold it for in season and then just trade for running backs during the season. Kind of like we did this year, to be quite honest with you. I might just, and that's with any of my second rounders, I might just kick them out to see if I can just kick the can and have them in my arsenal for when I know. Because look, we don't know who's the running back going to be. We don't know who's going to be the Ramondre Stevenson most times. We don't know who's going to be the Alexander Madison most of the time. We got lucky with those guys because they're strict backups. Like you knew it was them. But most of the running back production that we got this year, we didn't know it was coming. So I'd rather hold on to it until I have an idea in season, actually, to make some moves with those picks.
So what's the deal look like? You're on the clock at the 206 and there's 4 running backs or 5 running backs off the board and you're trying to get out of it. I think here's the problem. That sounds great in theory until you're in a league with a bunch of sharp people and they're all kind of looking at similar tiers to you.
Yeah.
You're going to see the same thing at the 110, 111, 112, where it's like, yeah, everyone sees the same tier as you. So as soon as you look at that tier and you go, man, I want to get out of this tier, I want to trade down. Well, guess what? Everyone in your league identifies that as this is not the spot you want to be. I don't care if I have the 202 and you have the 110. To me, they're no different.
Yeah, but we still have those windows, right? We have the combine windows where some dude that nobody really knows all that well is going to run a 4.4, and he's going to jump up to everybody's RB3 for the day, and everyone will think this running back class is deeper than it is. But
that's why we're debating it right now, though, because
your points taken. I got to trade the picks now, or if gun to head, I'm going to go with the running backs because. Usually, again, running backs just need one guy to go down. Wide receivers, it's not the same. One wide receiver goes down. It's not like a rookie generally steps right in, or a backup wide receiver steps right in and takes all of his target share.
Okay, so let's say you're at the 208 in just this pretend fictional draft. We're going to fast forward 4 months to where we're actually doing drafts. You're at the 208, and Shane is silly. He has no clue who to pick. Okay? And you've put it in your chat, hey, I want to trade this 208. And it's just crickets, right? No one's sending you any offers. You've been on the clock for 4 hours. I'm texting you saying, hurry the hell up and pick. Do you take 2 future thirds for that pick? Knowing you could spend those thirds during the season and buy a couple starts, or do you just bite the bullet and take a shot and maybe you end up with Trey Sermon, maybe you end up with Ramondre Stevenson, maybe you end up with Kenneth Gainwell and it looks great and then it's not great. I mean, that it's a coin flip, right? Whether you hit on a running back there or you don't.
Yeah, not to be this guy, but it's probably going to depend on what my team looks like. What do I think I need more? What can I use more as an asset? Can I use picks more in season? Because I think my team's got a shot, and I built a 0 RB roster, which I did because I hate running backs, and they're all evil now. I think I'm probably more likely. I hate being the guy that gives up the 3 for a 2. You know what I mean? Like the 2 for a 3. Like I hate going backwards. So just me knowing me, I'm probably going to go ahead and make the pick and hate it. But you know what? By that same token, if I would have been smart and known that, last year I should have drafted Michael Carter, even though I didn't like him because I know he had at least a market. I would have been in better shape than some of the drafts I had where I draft Amari Rodgers out of principle or whatever the hell it was.
I was just going to say, because we both were guilty. You had Amari Rodgers on your mind last year. I had Diami Brown. We both like Kellen Mond. I bet you we could go back and find 20 drafts where we refused to give up that late second because we wanted to take a shot on one of those 3 guys. And I wish within like 2 or 3 weeks, I wish I could have turned them into 2 thirds so I could have bought some points during the season. So that's why we're having this discussion, because we've learned from this in the past. And it just feels so gross on the clock to say, I cannot give up that 210 and just get a third and a fourth or 2 thirds back. And you're just going, that's crazy. But it's, again, if you can project this I'm not saying trade the 209 right now for 2 future thirds. But if you hold on to that pick until draft time, you may get on the clock and realize you're at a tier break, right? Like it's just a free for all there and you've lost the value. And I don't think this year, when you get to the mid to late first of the first round and the mid to late second or the mid to late part of the second round, you're not getting a future first or a future second for that pick on the clock. People are not going to give up the 23 picks. If they do, consider yourself lucky. So if you like that idea, spam it now. And you might think I'm crazy, but if you have the 108 and you can get a random 23 first, especially if you look at that team and you're like, yeah, I see Shane's quarterbacks. They're Jimmy Garoppolo and Matt Ryan, and I'm not too confident that Shane's not going to do something reckless with this roster. And next year, that 2023 first could be the 103. Let's make the trade now. That's what you're betting on. So if you see a roster, I think you got to make those moves now. You're not going to be able to get those 1-for-1 on the clock. Don't you agree? Just getting the future pick in the same round.
And the best thing about that 2023 first is it literally can be anything. It could be the 101 up until about week 7 of next year. Mm-hmm. So that's literally like the ultimate mystery box.
Yep. Well, we got a couple other questions. I'm just going to throw these out there randomly because we had one more topic. I think we'll maybe save that till the next episode. Spock 498. What do you think, Shane? Kenny in the 209 or the 202?
I'm surprised you can move up that much with Teddy. So I am accepting that a lot.
202 easy, right? Just give me the best asset.
Yeah.
Yeah, that brings up another question. I don't want to go too deep into this because I could literally talk for an hour, but we were talking in the HQ patron chat earlier about quarterback pivoting, and we've done some prior shows on different platforms on our podcasts about kind of the dead spot tiers at QB2s this year, how the scoring really flattened off. That's the type of deal where, what do you think about pivoting off of some of these QB2s? Carr, Tannehill, Wentz, Mayfield, whoever you put in the QB2 range. Go look at the scoring from this year. Go look at the ADP, and you can kind of see who fits in there. Tearing down, I don't love Teddy Bridgewater, but what is Baker Mayfield worth in terms of picks, Shane? Just throwing it out there. 12-team Superflex. What's he worth? A second?
Superflex, I will give you the 208.
Okay, so
how's I'm willing to go.
Can you go? Doesn't it make sense to pivot down to the 208 and still get Teddy Bridgewater thrown back in? Like, there's a shot he starts some games, right? I mean,
yeah. But see, there's also, if I can get up to that 202 using that Teddy Bridgewater example, I can use that 202 to move into the first round. I can use that 202 to trade into next year's first, maybe, if I add something to it. That's why I'd rather do that. I don't want to pivot down from Baker Mayfield because I think he's already pretty far down as you can get and still being usable in fantasy football. Teddy Bridgewater, we're getting to the point where he's going to be a spot starter, which has value, right? But it's just when is he going to get the start because someone got hurt? Tell you what I would do. I don't know if you can. Baker Mayfield for Jimmy G in a third. Do you think you could pull that off?
No.
Nah, Jimmy G's
I think
got
Jimmy
more
G's
value
got
now.
I think Jimmy G's got the same or more value than Baker. That's where we're at.
Maybe Wentz to Jimmy G. I don't know. If I could do Wentz to Jimmy G, I'd do that.
Yeah, I think, again, you're looking at, to sum this up, because I don't want to go through every quarterback and go through the ADP. To sum this up is there's a tier of QB2s that are only in that range, not because they provide any sort of positional advantage. They're only in that range because they have perceived job security for at least one more year. I give you a name. You tell me if you think they're guaranteed to start next year. And if you say yes, you probably value them a little bit higher than Jameis Winston or Teddy Bridgewater or whoever insert name is. You're not sure if they're going to start, so you're a little scared. I think there's some room to move. You just have to take on some bets that maybe the guys you pivot to have to still find a job. But as soon as they find a job, if I told you, Shane, and this is going to sound gross, but if I told you a team's going to give Mitchell Trubisky a 1-year deal worth $13 million, and he's going to go into the season as a starter, he's a QB2 in Dynasty, right? Like, he's like QB 24-ish, somewhere around that range.
Yeah.
Immediately, the day he gets named the starter, right?
If I could trade Baker for a Mitch Trubisky and a second type player, I'd do that every day of the week.
I'm not saying just blindly do that trade. Think about that, though, and just think about the range of outcomes if you make that trade. And Mitch Trubisky were to sign, and insert any name you want. There's probably 10 names you could throw into that name for Trubisky, right? As soon as they're named a starter, you've basically been given like a 1-year leash, kind of like you were with Garoppolo this year. It's going to be sink or swim. A lot of chances like guys like Trubisky are going to get. What do they do, Shane, after 1 year? They sink, right? We're not banking on him starting through 2025, but you're not banking on Baker Mayfield starting through 2025 or Carson Wentz or any of these guys. You might get burned, but I don't think it's a bad thought process to go through the quarterback tiers and say, okay, who on this list has a higher range of outcomes than what they're currently being priced at? And I threw out the example today, like, I don't hate pivoting from Carson Wentz to like Matt Ryan in a second. And people are like, oh no, that's crazy. But Matt Ryan's probably going to start for another year or two. And he's not any good and he doesn't score fantasy points, but it's not a terrible bet. Now that's just a thought process, thought-provoking idea there to do that. So someone posted, hey, Real Fantasy Timeline. Josh, how's it going? Sutton worth in 2022 picks. You kind of already answered that. Late second?
Yeah, late second.
Rockley. Oh shit, Charbonnet's going back to UCLA. Yep,
yes,
cross him off. Goodbye.
Yep.
He was intriguing this year. He's going to get lost next year.
28 years old when he comes out next year.
Yeah, he just I like Charbonnet actually, but the fact that he's going back and he's just going to get buried in next year's class. I mean, he's going to be like the running back 10, running back 12. He's just going to, I just wish he would have come out
His
selfishly.
career is hurtful. It started off so well, so promising, and quickly has gone south.
Here's one, Cody Hutchinson. What is your trade value for Russell Wilson? And I listened to a podcast today, Shane, and they kind of threw around Russell Wilson to the Eagles. And I thought of you the whole time I'm listening to that conversation, but their arguments were pretty solid. Like, what would the Eagles have been able to do this year with Russell Wilson instead of Jalen Hurts?
They might have pulled off 10 wins. Yeah, 10 wins instead of 9. And then gotten, instead of smoked in the playoffs, they would have lost by a comfortable margin. But I'm not a Russell Wilson guy, so I shouldn't be answering this question. It's just, what is your trade value for Russell Wilson? I mean, I traded him for the 102 and a 2023 first the other day, and I was happy with that.
Wait a second. You got the 102 and the 23 first?
Something along those lines, yeah.
I mean, the details are important.
I threw in Jerry Jeudy. I did throw in Jerry Jeudy, yeah.
I mean...
So basically, I looked at it as going, well, I'm turning Russell Wilson into Matt Corral and what ended up being probably Deontay Johnson, and I'm A-okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting more than 2 firsts for Russell Wilson, I don't care where they're at, is probably a really good deal. If I'm pivoting, I don't even want to. This is where Shane and I differ. Shane hates Russell Wilson. I love Russell Wilson. So we have to find a middle ground. I mean, I'm on the more of the buy train for Russell Wilson, just given kind of what we talked about with the Broncos guys. I'm just banking he's going to get out of Seattle. But this year was so frustrating with Russell Wilson in Seattle that I'm not sure I can go out and buy aggressively. But I mean, I think I'd give up any maybe not a top 2 pick, but top 6 pick. I think I'd give up for Russell Wilson. But I could get burned on that. But I also think that this draft class is not one where I'm excited to draft the quarterbacks at all. So if I need a quarterback, then I'd rather trade for Russell Wilson than draft Matt Corral, I guess would be my point. So we'll see where they end up landing. But this is definitely one where Shane and I will have to revisit, because right now Shane would sell him away for.
Oh, I got the exact details of that trade. So I gave up.
Okay, let's see it.
Jerry Jeudy, Russell Wilson, a 2023 second. I got back the 2022 102, 2023 first, and a 22 214. Yeah, and that's probably a little low on Russell, to be quite honest with you. I'm not a Russell guy, never been. I was happy to move him.
Yeah, you just take in mind Shane does not like Russell Wilson, so he was probably super excited thinking.
Yeah. I don't like Russell Wilson at all. He's not very good. He's good 8 games a year at best. Anyway.
Well, we'll revisit that. We'll see where he ends up. Hopefully not back in Seattle for everybody's sake. Whether you like him or not, his dynasty market will be more fun if he goes somewhere else.
That's what I was going to say. It would be more fun if he just moves on from Seattle, or if Pete moves on. If one of those two things happens, I'll revisit my feelings towards Russ.
Here's one, Carlo Kiltz. Which pick would you want from Pittman to Debo? Debo's an interesting one, but you're going up to Debo. What would you add to Pittman? Assume 12-team Superflex.
I got to give you a late first. I got to give you a 108, 109, because Pittman to me is a wide receiver 2, and Debo's shown wide receiver 1 upside, including being a wide receiver 1 this year. Although, he cheated a little bit because he played running back, but whatever. Those points count.
Yeah, I have no Debo across my 50-plus leagues. Literally none. None, not one. I haven't had one in 2 years, but now I'm at a point where I'm kind of intrigued to get one, but there's a part of my brain that says just don't do it. Do not do it. You know what I mean? Just because it feels
current cost.
Well, and I keep seeing people say this. What if he gets running back eligibility, Shane? Are you more interested now that you can play him in either spot?
No, I want him to stop playing running back. Let's just stop that, please.
But isn't it ideal that he gets running back eligibility for a year, but then doesn't play running back? Isn't that what you want to see?
Yeah, I'd love to see him get the eligibility, and then Kyle Shanahan never put him in the backfield again. Just please stop that. If anyone's in California, San Francisco, please start a petition to make that happen.
Here's another one. Ridley Truther. Is there anyone or a package deal you would move Lamar Jackson for in a super flex league. He has a ton of shares. He'd like to move on, thinking T-Law, Lance, or Fields plus a player or a pick. What do you think about that process?
I mean, the process is fine, but I'm going to need a guy in the Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson range back. Obviously, I'll probably aim a little higher, but that's where I'll settle on.
So Trevor Lawrence and Deontay Johnson or Lamar?
Man, I love Lamar so much. You know this.
So do I.
I'd probably reject it, but it's a good trade. It's a good offer. It'd be one of those offers you sent me, and I'd be like, man, if his name wasn't Lamar Jackson, say his name was Joe Jackson, we could make this deal. But nope, I love Lamar.
Yeah, we're not playing fantasy baseball from the 1910 season. Lance or Fields, does that change a little bit? Do you have them higher than T-Law?
I kind of think I do. Yeah, T-Law looks so bad this year. I would probably be able to hit accept on Lance or Fields and Johnson as opposed to T-Law, which is just crazy since T-Law was the number 1 overall pick at Superflex. But look, we've seen that Fields, what he can do a little bit when Nagy wasn't around, when he had COVID, and that was fun. And, you know, we saw a little bit of Lance, enough of Lance to go, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I think the Lance is probably the target of those guys because you didn't get to see a lot of them this year, but I tend to think, I mean, I've brought this up a couple times in our patron chat. Like, I tend to think next year, if Lance has the it factor where he's going to explode and end up being anything close to like a top end, you know, I don't even want to say like it's fair to project like a Lamar or Josh Allen ceiling on him, but if he's going to get anything close to that, you're going to see it quickly. You're not going to have to wait 2.5 years for it to happen. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to go through a whole season where he struggles.
You're not going to go through a season that we just had with Jalen Hurts where you come to the end of the year and you go, I still don't know what I have. You knew immediately. You knew immediately what Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. Like, you knew, oh, okay, these guys are superstars. Just like
you knew within about a season worth of games where you're going to get about a season worth of games, probably 2/3 through next year. You're going to have a full sample size of Trey Lance and say, I either know or I don't. And I think there's different outcomes here too. There's a Jalen Hurts level outcome where it's like, damn, Trey Lance is great for fantasy, but he's going to crush all the weapons along the way until he ends up not being the starter anymore in a couple years. Or he's on a track to be Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, where it's like, in 2 years, I want every part of this offense, including the quarterback. And I think you're going to see that quickly. So part of me still actually is intrigued in buying Lance over the others because I think he's the only one of the three. Maybe Fields still has it to an extent, depending on who they hire. I think Lance is the only one that has like that range of outcome from a value perspective as well, right? Like, if Lance comes out next year and just smashes like the first 5 or 6 games, his value is going to be Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, or higher. Like, if that's how fast it's going to rise.
I think we'll see the same thing with Fields, though.
Depends on who they hire, right?
Yeah, because we knew Nagy was bad. We didn't realize it was this bad. Trevor Lawrence was so bad this year that I almost need to see a complete season from him before I can even trust him again, because he also doesn't have the rushing upside that Lance and Fields do.
Question from Alex: Who should I trade Justin Fields for? Need wide receiver and running back help. Half PPR. I don't know about you, Shane. If I have any of the top 10 dynasty quarterbacks and then I throw in Fields, Lance, I have a hard time trading them away unless I'm getting a really strong 2-for-1. Like, I don't even really want to pivot off of Lance for a QB2 plus or Fields for a QB2 plus. You know what I mean? Like, it would take 2 wide receiver 2s or 2 strong shots for me to make that deal if I'm not getting a quarterback back. It's tough to trade those guys if I have them.
Yeah, if I'm moving off the upside of Fields, who is someone that, coming into the beginning of this year, is someone that I thought could be a top 8 quarterback, and I still believe that. If I'm moving off of him, you're probably giving me a wide receiver 1. I don't even want multiple pieces. I'll probably ask for like a 3rd and a 4th just as throw in, just because. But I'm probably going to ask for a wide receiver 1 from you. So we're probably not going to deal.
Half PPR, like, you'd need Javonte Williams plus to make that trade still, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be, as soon as you ask for that plus on a player like that, I think, like, I'm not really interested in pivoting off of Fields for a non-top 4 insulated running back. So essentially Swift, Taylor, Javonte, maybe Najee. But like once you get down into the lower range, like if you're trying to trade me a Dalvin Cook or someone like that, like you're gonna need to add like a 23 first to that. You know what I mean? Like that's where you're within the striking distance. So at half PPR, it's tough because I really don't want the receivers as much, but I really don't want to liquidate Justin Fields for running backs. You know, that's the opposite of what I'd be looking. Here's a good one. We haven't talked this player since the season ended. Travis Etienne in the 210 or Rashad Penny in the 110? Assume 12 team superflex.
Come
on, this one's easy.
I'm thinking a throw, all right? I'm just thinking about the quarterbacks. By the time the draft comes around, there's going to be 6 quarterbacks in the first round. I'm going to end up taking the 110 and Penny, to be honest with you.
I'm with you. That's why we're best friends. Yeah, I think, let's see, Rashad Penny right now, DLF's ADP. Where did he slot in, Shane? Do you remember? I have it in front of me.
Nowhere. It was bad. He didn't exist.
Well, no, the latest ADP, he's running back 31.
Is he? Wow. I'll tell you what. That's like if Ronald Jones ever has a 3-week stretch, that's what's going to happen to his ADP, because there was people that loved Rashad Penny coming out of school, and they're just looking for reasons to draft him high. Good for you guys. Yeah,
maybe we'll do another. I'm starting to write a lot of checks. I'm not sure we're going to cash because we only do an episode like once every month. But I do think there's a strategy to kind of tiering and bucketing running backs right now, because there's so much volatility with, you have the guys that are locked in. Then you have the guys that are like, they're good, but you still need them to have a landing spot where they can kind of continue where they ended up this year. Like your James Connors, Leonard Fournette, Sony Michel's, Rashad Penny's, like you feel real good about those guys if they were just to return to the situation similar to what they were this year. But if they hit free agency and they're subject to going somewhere else, then it's like, man, I don't want to make a big bet on Sony Michel, knowing if he's not coming back to the Rams, he could end up somewhere where it's like he's just another guy. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a little volatile to buy those guys. So you kind of have to put your tiers together and figure out who are you really convicted on. And who are you not convicted on? Shout out to J Mike. What's up, J Mike? Just joining, rewinding all the way back to the beginning 48 minutes ago. Appreciate you. See if there's any other quick ones on here. Oh yeah. Here's one. I wanted to bring this up before we end, Shane. Deshaun Watson. Where are you at?
Oh, I'm buying.
He was dead to you last July.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where are you at now? Are you interested again?
Yeah, I traded for him a couple times in the season. He's going to play somewhere. He's going to have an 8-game suspension. I don't want to make parallels, but we just saw the national media just fet Ben Roethlisberger all week for his last game. And I can't find a more apt parallel than that. Deshaun Watson will be suspended maybe 4 to 8 games, and then he's going to come back in and be one of the top 3 quarterbacks like he was before he went out. So he's going to be somewhere. We know that. It might be even Houston if they hire Brian Flores, which would just be hilarious. But anyway.
So here's what I'm thinking, because this is your hometown team. No. Jalen Hurts versus Deshaun Watson. Where's the leverage on that deal? Assume it's Watson over Hurts easily after Hurts kind of showed up pretty badly in the playoffs. But if you're on the Watson side, what would you take to pivot down to Hurts, knowing that you're going to be holding a volatile asset probably for the next 3 or 4 months, and then into next season, it's just going to be week to week with Hurts? What would it take to add on top if you're selling Watson?
You're going to have to give me at least a 2023 first and second.
Ooh.
Yeah, and look, and that's with knowing that Hurts is probably going to be the Eagles starter next year, right? I'll say there's a 90% chance of that, and he's going to put up decent fantasy numbers, and not real football numbers. So I know it's a 1-year shot on him, and I need those picks because I know after that 1 year, we might be moving into the realm of Jalen Hurts starts being a career backup.
So Hurts, and what's the cutoff for 22 picks that you'd add to Hurts to get Watson? How early would you go? 22 picks.
105.
So you'd go Hurts and anything at the 105 or later to try to get Watson?
Yep.
Yeah, this question, Ridley Truther, how high of a first this year in Superflex would you trade for Watson? What would be just straight up, what would you think the tier would be?
No, straight up, I mean, honestly, if it's just the pick by itself, you could give up the 101 because I don't
That's
think
what I was going to say. If
in the
you're
range of
going to take
outcomes,
a quarterback, like I'd probably rather just have Watson, you know?
I'll take the shot on Watson not going to prison over Corral being a good quarterback in the pros. And Corral could end up 102 or Watson. Same thing, because at 102, I mean, you're likely drafting a quarterback, I'm guessing, in Superflex, or you're trying to trade down and no one's going to trade with you. And you end up with a 108 and 109 if you're able to pull it off and you hate yourself. Or you draft Brees Hall at 102 and then you go, I can't believe I just drafted a running back at 102. I told myself I'd never do this again.
Yeah, I think that's the question is, like, from a process standpoint, you hate to give up those picks this early, but by the time we get to like April, free agency is going to be come and gone, and we might have more clarity on Watson one way or the other. And if there's any sort of good clarity not good clarity for the whole situation, we're not even getting into that, but just good clarity from a dynasty standpoint, like, hey, I know he's going to play again, and a team like traded for him or is trying to trade for him, then you're going to get laughed at if you're trying to offer a mid-22 first in this year's class.
Laughed at if you offer the 101 by itself. Once Watson gets, we get news on Watson getting a 4-game suspension, and you offer someone the 101 for him, they're just going to laugh at you and say that's short by at least another first.
Yep, you got to really think about this move and making a big bet on it before probably March's free agency period. And I know I've saw that thing going around on Twitter. The depositions from Busby on Watson is going to be sometime end of February, early March. He's either going to settle the cases before then, or you're going to get stuff that comes out in those depositions that might change the PR perspective on this, which could change his dynasty market. So keep that in mind. But yeah, I think you got to make the big bets on Watson now. And the man told you 105, anything later than 105 with Jalen Hurts, you do, and basically any pick in 22. So there's some deals to be had there. That's it. Over an hour, Shane. Longest Fantasy and Chill ever. And I don't think we ever stopped.
That's actually not true.
It's not. Have we gone more than an hour before?
Yeah, we've gone an hour and 18 minutes before. I don't know why or how. It was back in the old days when we used to have show sheets for this show. So what, next week? We'll do this next week again, right?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Next week.
You know what? The bad thing is this is on video and it's actually archived somewhere, so people could hold us to it if we don't. But yeah, we'll try to get together.
We've said it before. In 2 weeks. We'll make this a bi-weekly thing. Maybe at worst bi-monthly.
Agree. We'll try. So at Shane is the worst, at Charles Chill FFB, DL Football, 1F. Check that out. Dynasty Trades in 5. Check that out. We do those every single day, pretty much. Just talking about a single player. A lot of what you got in this show, we do in Dynasty Trades in 5, but it's really like Dynasty Trades in 8. So check that out. Subscribe at Dynasty Pandemic if you enjoy that as well. And that's it. Appreciate everybody tuning in live. Had a lot of viewers, a lot of questions, a lot of engagement. And for those that we couldn't get to, apologize. But we'll try to be here next week, according to Shane. So get on Shane if you really want to make it happen. He's going to have to bug me to make it happen. Mm-hmm. All right. Later, DLF.
See ya.